Hello. First thing I just want to do is pay tribute to Rachel and thank you for the last time that I saw you at the Ukrainian church. For those of you who didn't see me, I'm the guy that's sister #died suddenly. And Rachel was sitting next to me, holding my hand all the way through that, so thank you very much. One of the things, it wasn't so much a question, it's more something, an observation from something that you said. A couple of things. I was watching a video about, I know it's a bit controversial maybe with some folk, but Dr. John Campbell. And I don't know if you've seen it, it's about an hour long, it's his latest one. It's with an Australian activist. At the end of that, and I can't remember it, but we'll watch it basically because it's really good. At the end of it, he does give some solutions to what we can do individually to recover from this trauma. Behind, if I could have remembered that, yeah. But one of the things that struck me was that he was talking about years 2000 into 2021. And he brought up that for some people, the reason that they're not acknowledging it now, or the trauma that we're having, is that was the best time of their lives. They were able to show the world how virtuous they were by sitting at home. And it really just hit me when you brought that up. It really brought that back to me today. That was one of the things. Just something else, an observation I've had over the last year. Obviously, after my sister dying, I've since had to leave my work and stuff, but never mind that. But as usual with work, they offer you telephone counselling type stuff. And I went through a triage process first, where I brought up what I believed was the reasons for my sister's death. The woman, the triage was very acknowledging of that, and very much. I'm paraphrasing her, but she said, maybe more folk should be saying what you're saying. I then got passed to the actual psychologist or whatever, who told me to stop my silly thoughts. And that's where we are today. One last thing, I also saw today, there's a 13-minute animated video. It is the first search if you do it on YouTube. It's called Kingdom. It's a black and white animated video. It sounds ridiculous, it's not. But my God, I watched that 13-minute video and it really gave me hope. So please Google that. Kingdom. If you just Kingdom, an animated short, and it's incredible. Thank you.
Hiya. Just an observation about initiation. Now, my thought on initiation is something that you impose on yourself. I.e., for instance, renting your first flat, or buying your first house, or buying your first car, or having your first child. Yeah. You initiate yourself. When society initiates upon you, that's when you get the trauma. So if you look at those 4 pictures that you put up on the slide, every one of them, show me a person that's smiling.
Every one of them, say again?
Those 4 pictures that you put up, show me a person that's smiling.
Yeah, no.
Society initiating upon somebody creates the trauma.
I mean, I hear you about that, and I think I would agree about maybe there are different ways you can look at it, because I suppose, initiate means to begin. It also means
Yes,
to
it
begin
does, yes.
something,
Yes,
doesn't
yes.
it?
Yeah. No, I think so. You can go to church, and you're initiating yourself into the church. That's absolutely fine. And you're doing it, that's your consent with yourself. But when that church is imposed upon you, that religion or whatever it be, that sect, that culture, that thing, when it's imposed to you by a society, it's initiated upon you, and that's where your trauma comes. So regardless of whatever it is, when you think about it and that sort of logic, you can partake of things and you can initiate yourself into it and be happy as Larry. When it's imposed upon you, whether it be religion, whether it be whatever, a government body, that's when your trauma starts. Or that's when your trauma is initiated, should I say.
I mean, I see where you're coming from, and I guess for me, and maybe I think I didn't make this totally clear, but I think, for example, what happened in 2021 and 2022, it was kind of a distorted form. It's not. I don't mean that as that. I think it was distorted, but I do think in a lot of initiation rituals, actually there is. It's kind of trauma. It's kind of almost deliberately traumatic. And so, and I think some people choose to kind of willingly undergo that. I mean, people willingly, and I don't think that's. It's how it's contained. It's how it's treated. And I think it was kind of distorted. There wasn't anything sacred about that. And actually, people didn't really give their full consent because they didn't know. We weren't given, people were not, they were not communicated, it wasn't communicated clearly to them. So I wonder, because I was sort of thinking about this, I think I maybe didn't make that distinction. I think, but I agree, but I think all initiations, in a way, a lot of initiations are traumatic. I mean,
I agree with that. There's no bad thing about that, to be quite honest. But if it's a self-imposed initiation, then you're in it. Like the gentleman was saying there, so many people acquired this, I'm for the greater good type of attitude, because that was their initiation and they were bought into it and they wanted to buy into it.
Yeah.
Whereas the population in here probably didn't want to buy into it.
But I don't know whether it's something we always kind of choose, because I was thinking about, so for example, in a metaphorical way, losing a child could be an initiation for some people. Nobody ever, I don't imagine anybody ever chooses to do that. But that's a trauma that could potentially be a sort of initiation, because you might be forced to grow from that. So I think I don't think I disagree with you about what you're saying. I think we're probably agreeing, but I wonder if it's like, there can be all kinds of different initiations, can't there? There can be loads of different types.
That's.
But I think I think we're agreeing on a lot of it, because it's like that wasn't really chosen. I don't think people. Well, I mean, informed consent. It's like it wasn't chosen.
No.
So, but it was kind of framed in. I think it was framed in that way. It's like churches. It was like. people, and then they get their status, and you get your tattoo even, so.
Bang the saucepan. And,
yeah. I mean, that's how I would see it anyway.
Yeah, on this same topic, I've found everything you said today resonates so much with me and very helpful to understand what I've been through and others around me have been through. But in terms of this, you're talking about initiation, but I get the concept because I was trying to make sense of family members who took the vaccination. I couldn't quite get my mind around it and still can't. But I did realise in certainly one circumstance, I realised it was to do with this wanting to belong, this sense of belonging. And a family friend who got vaccinated used this term. She said, we were like social outcasts if we weren't going to take it. So she felt she had to. And, just hearing these kind of terms and what you've said tonight has really helped me see more clearly, what I think was happening, from a society, within society. Yeah. Yeah, so thank you very much for your insights.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much. I'll get you in a second. I missed your last talk, so this was a real pleasure for me, and I think it's a very important aspect of what we've come through, to be able to talk about it and look at it. And it struck me that probably, like myself, there's very few of us that get that outside of this room, that sort of acknowledgement. We're still pariahs in society, and we're still considered a fringe minority. Even those words were used at some points. One of the things I'm looking at the moment is German New Medicine, which, I don't think it's the whole story, but I think it's a huge part of the story, and how our health is affected by these sorts of traumas. So I'm very tuned in now when I'm listening to things about what I feel inside. And when you spoke about betrayal and the people turning against you and people not being who you thought they were, and all of that sort of disappointment, I felt it within my body just now. And I was thinking, that's important, but I already know that cognitively, obviously. But one of the things that I felt that coming through this was I was being challenged to face all my childhood and circumstances, all the dynamics within my family, and all at once. And including that my mother was dying, and that I was going through the menopause, and, all the other stuff. I mean, we've got trauma, absolutely. But my question regarding this particular thing is, because one of the aspects of German New Medicine is, for some people, they feel it's important to get to the origin of what the trauma was. And where that is, you can do it through fasting, for example, because emotions come up when you fast, so you get a chance to look at those things. But my question is, do you think it's important that we know the origin, or is the feeling more important to address regarding that particular aspect of the trauma? And it's different for everyone, I know.
What do you? I'm happy. What do you think? I'm happy to answer,
I recognise that came up for me. I recognise where it comes from. It's from my childhood. I have stories attached to that. They may or may not be true because I don't have the memory, and I certainly can't go back and visit that place. So my question is, do you feel it's important to know the story, the origin of the trauma? Or is the feeling more important? What to experience?
I mean, I suppose I'm thinking about, because you know what you said about German New Medicine and how you think it's a really important part of the picture, but it's maybe not everything, but it's a really important piece. And I wonder if it's like, can we ever know like the one single cause? Like, you know, can we ever no, you know, yeah, I mean, well,
Elizabeth watched the same podcast as I did,
Yeah.
because that was said. That was definitely said.
I mean, I think even that's up for question now, isn't it? So,
That was mine. I was like, that didn't happen.
So I wonder if I don't think it's maybe the most important thing, because actually, perhaps, for example, if it was something. If you think about that shutdown response, like for some people who've maybe been abused in childhood, they wouldn't even have a conscious memory of that. And would it actually be helpful for them to recover that, the conscious memory? But you can still kind of work through responses that come up without knowing exactly why it might be, because there might be loads of different reasons.
Yeah, because I think you said it's like sometimes, I mean, in German New Medicine, for example, it is suppressed emotion trapped. So there's a conflict. And for me, like, so the example that I've just given, resolving that conflict, my sister would right now phone me up and go, "Oh my God, Pauline, you were so right. You were so right. I see it all so clearly now. And what did I just do to our mother?" And what, you know, all of that. Of course, I'm never going to have that.
No.
You know, so I've got to deal with it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean, though. You know, it's like you don't always get the conflict resolved externally.
No.
And I wonder if we ever can. Do we have to go within, drop the story? Not, you know, or question even the story. Do I believe that about myself? Am I that unworthy? Am I that, like, you know, isolated from the world? Is that really true? You know, I'm all for questions. Anyway, that was mine.
Yeah.
Hi there. Just regarding traumas, and most of we've all experienced traumas of some descriptions, losing our friends and various other things. My main thing at the moment now is, with the people having had these injections and the fear that they are going to create lots of problems for them all in the future, how do we deal with that when we're trying to talk to people about that? I mean, our daughter went and got these jags behind her back, and we were devastated when she did that. But we're now at the stage of worrying, what will these jags do to them in the future? And how do you deal with that? And how can you speak to them about that? Along with all your friends that have taken them as well, you know. You know, it's a thing you're going to say, well, how you can't approach them by saying, "We told you so." I mean, you have to do something far more subtle. But how do you deal with that, and how can you discuss it? Well, the main worry is if it does go as bad as one anticipates, a lot of these things are going to happen. I mean, you're seeing it now with people getting illnesses that they shouldn't be getting at young ages and stuff. If these things do occur, how do you approach discussing it with your child, for example? I mean, that's one of the things you're now traumatised about for the future.
I'm the same. I've got grown-up children who have all been jabbed, and there is a trauma, and I think there's a trauma, say for me as a parent, wondering what the outcome will be, if there will be an outcome, and it could be this year, it could be in 5 years' time, whenever, and that fear is with us as parents all the time, thinking, "Oh, are you okay today? Are you feeling fine?" You know, we don't ask all that, but any tiny little thing is a worry. On the other hand, I also think that the children, the adult children, they must be afraid. They're hearing all of this. The trauma for them will be the fear that they're having to live with, I think, that they just don't know when that day will be, or what will happen, or is this pain that I've got in my knee, is it something wrong? And I can feel that from my children. I can actually feel that fear. And I can pick it up. And we actually don't really talk about it. in terms of, well, it's obviously the jab. I mean, they know our feelings, they know anything like that. I was at 10 funerals in 9 months last year with people dying suddenly, unexpectedly. I've just heard of another friend died unexpectedly. My husband was at the climbing wall on Friday, and a guy had a heart attack on the climbing wall in Ratho, with his son and daughter-in-law there. So it's happening all the time. The kids are seeing it in the football field. They don't talk about it. And I think the fear is the trauma. They don't want to face it. They realise maybe now what they've done and know that we were probably right, but they never tell mum and dad, oh, you were right, really. So you never get that acknowledgement. You never get somebody saying, and we never can say, we told you so. So we're living, I feel that, I put it to the back of my mind, I don't think about it on a daily basis, but I definitely know. And I did have a chat to one of my daughter-in-laws, and she said, and I can speak quite frankly to her, and she knows our feelings, and she said, we know what's happened, and she said, we just have to deal with it. She said, we just have to deal with it because anything could happen to us at any time, and we have to live with that knowledge. And I just have to accept that and respect their feelings. And I just totally sympathise with you, absolutely. But I just don't think there's anything that, anything could happen to them at any time. So we can't ever say it's definitely caused by the jab. God forbid they got run over or, anything like that. But there is a fear as a parent, and I think that's a kind of an internal trauma that we cope with, on a daily basis, really.
It's like I'm thinking actually, for both of you, it's like the not knowing, isn't it? It's like it's like having to live with the not knowing. And it feels, maybe it's like being bereaved, but it's more complicated, isn't it? It's almost like because it's just it's a loss, but you don't know.
Mm-hmm. There is a certain feeling of loss, and there is a loss of connection. Very much a loss of connection between them now, and we were always very close. We could talk about everything and everything. Now, there's a distance, there's a kind of a barrier that, don't talk to mum about that, kind of thing. But so on another point though, I'm in school now, I'm going into schools and kind of trying to infiltrate a little bit, but anyway. Just to either sow seeds or find out what's going on in all aspects, all about sex ed and all this stuff. The children, personally, this is my opinion, are traumatised. And the behaviour that's coming through in the schools breaks my heart. And what I'm watching on a daily basis with behaviour, primary 1 children have got no idea how to socialise, no idea how to sit quietly, no idea how to have a conversation, communicate. You've got the ones up the school, and they had no socialisation at nursery or anything. Then you've got the ones up the school a wee bit in primary 3, 4 and 5 who are angry children, and they're running and they're screaming and they're causing huge disruptions. The primary 2 teacher, she has so much disruption in her class, she has to evacuate it up to 5 times a day because the children are violent, they're trashing the place. But you go up the school to P7 and you say to them, we're going to have a fun day today. And their idea of a fun day is going on the laptop, and they just shut down. And you see all this, and my heart is bleeding for these children. I think, oh my goodness, what's happening to them all? The unfortunate thing is the teachers are the other side of the coin as if they've forgotten about it all. They've gone back to normal. And I'm watching these teachers and thinking, you don't know what's going on. I'm asking them, what do you think's wrong with the child? Oh, bad behaviour, this, spoiled, this. And they come up with these answers, and I have to say to them, but don't you think it could be an impact of what has happened to these children over 2 years, 2020, 21? Oh, some will say, oh, I don't think so. Or they just think it's past, it's gone. Then you have the parents who cannot cope at all and can't cope with these children. And, you know, they're in a bit of a trauma because they don't know what to do with their children. And there's no help for them. And it's just as if they're just a wee forgotten generation. And that's what I feel about the school. It's very sad. The good thing about it is it's a Catholic school, so there is no real sex ed in it or anything that can fight about against that. But I keep talking to the teachers about that. Nobody has a clue. They have not got a clue about the big picture. And it's as if they have just switched off. And I'm absolutely just appalled, you know, I think. And I keep talking, oh, yeah, you said about that, you know. Told them I was coming here tonight. Are they interested? Nobody's interested. They've got their life back. They're back to normal. They're carrying on. And they're just in this denial. It's like a denial. And that's what I feel about that. So, and I just wondered, how can I help? What can we do about these children? You know, is it something that we say, well, they do need, you know, interventions, they do need some therapy and suggest things like that? Or do we not say, oh, you know, they are traumatised and we just try and help them to get through it? I don't know what to do.
Well, the other day we were talking about creating a school when this gentleman came and was the best. Even though we are a minority of people, we have to put our brains together,
Absolutely.
Our expertise together, our newfound power together, our sovereignty together, even though we're still educating ourselves into all these subjects, and create a community. That's why I come here all the time, and decide to create a school. We need to take them, poor children, out of this environment, put them in a field, in a forest, and do something that's very natural where they can communicate. That's what we need to do. We need to get organized. We are adults. It's up to us to take the responsibility. Because we can see the damage, we can see the teachers don't have a clue, the parents don't have a clue, everybody is totally lost. I'm lost myself. But we need to kind of make a step and create a new school. I would call it a collective education. It's not like home education, because it's too difficult for the parents. Both parents need to bring the money in to pay all the bills, so we help them. Everybody gives 3 hours of their voluntary time. One teaches school sewing, the other one cooking, the other one cutting wood, the other one mechanics, the other one... Everybody has some skill around all of us to provide something. We just need to kind of get the structure organized, get a bit of land somewhere or a warehouse or something, and we just go together. That's all.
Yeah. And on that note, a number of us have actually spoken about that already. No, I'm joking. No, but we really have. And it is the issue of finding a property. You know, do you buy a place? Do you rent a place? It's a big... I have looked into it. It is a huge responsibility. And to get people, I remember about 3 years ago being at Holyrood and talking to a group, and there was an awful lot of, you know, teachers there and people there. And so I said, I'm happy to do this and, you know, do, say, English and maths or something, and other parents would do sewing or art or whatever they were interested in. But actually to get that then off the ground and to have people really committed to do that, it's a huge amount, it's a huge amount of work. And then there's a huge, big responsibility too. It's not just a case of setting up a school and thinking you're going to do it and it'll be easy. I've also been to the Greek Orthodox Church place, and they want to set up a faith school, but for anything, an open school. And I've been there to speak to them about it. They've not got premises yet, but they're trying to raise funds. And I've, offered to help there and what have you. And I have been asked to do homeschooling, and I would. But again, it's the responsibility. There's a lot of things that you need to look at before you can take on, people's children coming to your house and everything and what have you. But it's certainly a way forward.
It's not impossible.
No, it's not impossible. But it's certainly, I think, is a way forward to think about alternatives for people with their children. I will say there's a lot of children in mainstream school, this is another issue completely separate really, that really shouldn't be, they're in the wrong place and the facilities are not there for these children. And the teachers can't cope, the parents can't cope. They know they shouldn't be there, but there is no other facility for these. And the poor children that are not getting the right education are the children that need it. So I would definitely think if I was a parent, I'd have my child out of the school.
Right. Just to say that Richard the other day said he wants to start a university. So I said to him, well, we'll start a school first and we end up with a university.
Right, can I just say that probably the children's behaviour is probably linked to what they've just had. It's probably knocked their microbiome for 6, and obviously your neurotransmitters are made in the gut. So I guess really these children probably don't even realise the bad behaviour is coming from the dysbiosis of the gut, and it's probably like a form of autism. And normally children are really good at detoxifying because they have a lot of glutathione and they're using up that really, really quickly. And also if you add in glyphosates and things like that, that's probably exacerbating it. So I think probably if you were going to do things with children, you would maybe have to start trying to get them to detox because or probiotics, because it's all that behaviour, bad behaviour is generally coming from the gut. There's also with vaccination sorry, I forgot the nerve, the longest nerve in the body. Vagus, thank you. That's damaged with vaccination, and a lot of the cranial nerves. Dr. Andrew Moulden's found that a lot of the children's cranial nerves were damaged, and of course that's obviously connected with everything. So I think that's probably added on to the trauma. So probably anything to do with helping the children will be something to do with restoring the gut. And really teaching the children probably how to look after their bodies and explaining to children, and if you do that, it's probably with the adults too. That's probably where a lot, I don't know if anybody's noticed, the driving, shocking, the people. I mean, honestly, and that is probably a certain amount of brain damage because vaccines do cause this problem with the cranial nerve and the vagus nerve. So it is going to be about people having to restore their guts so that they're more balanced moods, and obviously the detoxification pathways need to be opened. And that will help a lot to do with the mental trauma. And I think when you're well nourished, I think you can handle traumas. I know personally that when you're well nourished, you can handle traumas better.
It's a kind of resource, isn't it? It's like if you're well resourced, you're more,
you have to eat
you're
well.
more able to respond.
You have to build
with
yourself
stuff.
back up. You have to be able to have these fat solubles to be able to make these.
Do you think it's a whole mixture of things? Because it sounds to me like actually, it's like so many things, isn't it? It's like almost everything's wrong. It's like making a child sit behind a desk for 6 hours a day and just kind of do all this rote learning. It's
Yeah.
like, how is that helpful?
See,
I
probably-
mean, actually, to respond to that by bad behaviour is probably not. It's not an unhealthy thing in a way, is it? But then there's also this issue. There's so. It's like it's almost like everything is dysfunctional, and so we always have to start.
If you
Right
can
from
do
the
some
beginning.
nervous system checks with children who are vaccine damaged, and if they blink and you slow it down, you can see like the eyes don't blink, the same. So there will be a lot of that going on, and that's probably contributing to a big part of the behaviour. So.
I think we were talking about the trauma that people who've had the vaccine are going through, like not knowing what might occur. It made me think about Alex Mitchell and John Watt, and that was it seemed like to me like a clear example of how trauma embraced leading to initiation. These two regular working class Scottish guys, just went along with what everybody else was doing and found themselves grievously harmed. But their response in both cases seemed to be, what can I make out of this experience? How can I deal with this? Neither of them is like trying to deny it happened, or there's no self-deception. They're embracing this experience and saying, this must, you've got to find, maybe the key to sort of getting past a trauma is finding meaning in it and acknowledging it's happened, but not being a victim, actually saying maybe this is happening for a reason. This is, and both of them like transformed by the experience. And they had, when they gave that talk in the at the church, they both spoke with this amazing kind of authority and power. So that's maybe I think like there's a trauma becomes an initiation maybe when you kind of choose it to an extent. Yeah. You kind of say this for some reason this had to happen.
Finding their purpose.
And and it must have happened for a reason. So,
Yeah, that's a really good example, because I'm sure you said, Glenn, like I think when we went to that talk, you said there was something that felt kind of a bit numinous about it, like there was something kind of really, they've really been through something and they've really grown from it. And I remember John sort of saying, "Oh, I'm just a joiner," and I was thinking, no, it's like there's really something, you've really been through something. Yeah, I think that's a really good example of like how somebody can go through something like that, and actually, on some level, they've had to embrace it, haven't they?
Just wanted to kind of, thanks very much. It's really, really quite interesting. Get your thoughts on medication and medication kind of versus talking therapies, and what do you think about the whole, just the idea of, well, somebody's going through a depression, you give them antidepressants, or what's your thoughts? I mean, that opens up a whole can of worms. But is there a quick way of answering that?
I mean, I think I've probably already blotted my copybook tonight, with what I've said about, so actually, because antidepressants are nothing after this. I get asked this question quite a lot, and actually there are a few other therapists here this evening, and so it'd be really interesting to kind of hear from other people what they think. But I'm very sceptical I am aware that people can become very habituated to antidepressants as well. Like you get kind of physiologically dependent on them. And, you know, I have had the experience of people coming off them very suddenly and then becoming sort of suicidal and incredibly distressed. And I didn't realise at the time that actually this was more likely to be an effect of coming very suddenly off antidepressants rather than kind of tapering. And I think a lot of therapists, a lot of us don't realise that that's important. And it is kind of shocking about the number of people who are on them for years and years and years. So, yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like, you know, it has to be the client's choice, and I can't tell somebody what to do about it. And but I guess I feel quite, even before 2020, I was quite sceptical about it, and I think the sense of just that emotional pain can be just sort of medicated away, and maybe things being sort of pathologised that are actually normal. You know, sometimes despair is an understandable response to a situation, and sometimes, you know, if you take antidepressants, it can flatten a lot of that, so that actually it just makes you tolerate the situation. I mean, that's just my feeling about it.
If I could give my view, I'm a clinician myself, and I've worked in the NHS and private practice. I think I'm going to be quite blatant. I think it's going to be the next awakening after the COVID vaccine is going to be exactly what zombies people have been turned into from medication. Actually makes me feel sick. Because, I mean, so many people that are obviously been through trauma, because I type up the notes. Now, some people, they call it endogenous, you know, when you've got an endogenous depression because there's a chemical imbalance. And then there's reactive depression. You could get into that again. You open up a can of worms when you get into that. But I think, basically, surely to God, we can now see what the pharmaceutical industry are all about, and that is ka-ching, creating customers. And I think this is going to be the next, after we've come to terms with what's happened to COVID, and we have to do that through compassion and being open-hearted and talking with one another and forgiving one another and moving on. But I think the next thing, the next awakening, I think, is the tumbling of the pharmaceutical industry and seeing just how damaged people have become. So, yeah, I think it's tragic. It's tragic. It's criminal.
Anyway, just to address, not the question, not what the lady said just now, but the previous two questions about, well, medication and the microbiome. Now, I trained as a nurse originally, and then I've worked across all sorts of healthcare, including the devil, the pharmaceutical industry. I've also was the account director for the NHS Helpline before it became NHS 24. So one of the things I came across about 18 months ago was a nutritional psychiatrist. I'd never come across that before, and I've got some friends who are psychiatrists, so straight on the phone, and they were quite surprised, and I took a deep dive into it. Very interesting about nutrition and psychiatry. Now, things like epilepsy, they have known for over 100 years, if you change your diet and you approach a younger epileptic, that can nearly reverse it. At Edinburgh University, there are trials going on, and there's a young man who was speaking on the video, was probably in his 30s, he's a doctor, I think it was a PhD doctor, on bipolar. I've had two friends who died early because of bipolar. It's a dreadful disease, and how that has been reversed by diet. And one of the things they do say about the microbiome, it will be the next batch of medicines. And I do believe that especially, I mean, you can get depression, which is situational depression, and some trauma happens in your life, divorce or someone dies, And that's quite natural to be depressed after that. Most people would. But when you look at people whose lives are going fairly okay, and then they have a malfunction of the brain, and they get depression and become psychotic, that's a very different thing. And what they're saying, a lot of this comes down to, I've forgotten the word. What's in your cells? What's the little jelly bean, the powerhouse, the mitochondrial? I was about to say it, and it went boom. Yeah, a lot of that comes down to the misfunctioning of the mitochondrial, and it is, as the lady said before, about our food. And I think if we can get that right, but the food industry is as bad as the pharmaceutical industry. So I'll just leave it at that. Here you go, Jen.
Hi, actually this is just a follow-on comment about what this lovely lady in front of me said. I think part of this awakening is going to be the true reconnection with Mother Earth, with nature, on every level, with our food, with medicine, understanding that our ancestors knew about natural stuff that we can take that helps with depression. It can all be done naturally. And also that big gift of nature, sunshine. Okay, thank you.
Good point.
Oops. Okay. Yeah, just going back to the depression again and schizophrenia and bipolar, Abraham Hoffer did a study and people were really, really low in a B vitamin. So again, that goes back to the microbiome. Also, you can have an inherited tendency, something called pyroluria, which you have a lot more anxiety. And again, that can be fixed with B6 and a lot of the B vitamins. So niacin's the one that's really stabilizes people with schizophrenia. So probably the nutritional deficiencies are a major thing, and genetic, you might need more of a certain vitamin. And then obviously the poisoning of the food, which obviously, so that is probably looking at it from more of a physical and biochemical, whereas obviously the trauma with things happening to you, that's a different story. But the food is a major important.
Do you think half the problem is it's like all this stuff's just got really separated out? So it's like, this idea of having a nutritional psychiatrist. I mean, to me, although I'm not sort of totally on board with the pharmaceutical psychiatry aspect of it, it's like maybe a lot of this just needs to be brought together rather than being so separate.
We went up to a really fantastic place called the Bow House up in St Monans, and there was grass-fed beef, there was wheat that was grown that doesn't cause celiac disease, because it's grown in the right soils. And this goes back to the permaculture with the soil and everything. There's no minerals in food anymore because of glyphosate binding them. So, I mean, they're cofactors for enzymes and everything like that. No wonder everybody's sick, depressed, needing stimulated. People they should have balance levels in the brain. It should be balanced. You shouldn't be too high, you shouldn't be too low. But we're being poisoned from so many different levels, and malnourished. We're overfed and malnourished. So going back to the food again, that's probably why the RECO ring is so important, and to find these suppliers that are providing food that are biodynamic, organic, glyphosate-free, so that you are getting the best nutrition to build the building blocks of neurotransmitters. So I think it goes back to that. The trauma thing, obviously, with things happening, I think if you can face a trauma and try and not numb it and go through it, and once you're out the other side, you feel amazing because you feel so empowered. And I'm talking from experience that it's like when you're taking off in an aircraft and you're going through the clouds, really black clouds, and you've got turbulence, and you're thinking, I have to keep going, and it's really, really turbulent, and all of a sudden you get through and then it's brilliant sunshine and smooth. So you can't go round it, you have to go through it. Yeah. And if you go through it and face it, you get support, you make sure you're well nourished, and you get support from somebody like yourself. But if you go through it and face it head on, you come out the other side and you feel like nothing can get you. Nothing can touch you after that. And we all need to feel like that. We all need to feel empowered and face the fear and do it anyway. And that is really, once you do that, that is really, really powerful. And that's when you become a sovereign person.
Okay, well, thank you for that talk, Rachel. I have a few things to say. Firstly, it was the questions and answers I think were very stimulating, and I'm going away with some things in my mind. The point that the lady you made at the back, I think, was a really good one. I went and forgotten who it was. Oh yeah, the Mother Earth, of course, and that of course connects with the Rico ring idea. Wendy's point there about, which is surprising for me, that, but perhaps not, because it's the way the world works, that there would be actually a nutritional and a gut aspect to not just the manifestation of trauma, but its resolution in whatever way that's to be resolved. The idea that you can, with proper nutrition, your body somehow knows. Like, I don't know, it receives the instructions from God or whoever it comes from. It knows how to fix itself. Yeah. But it needs to get the fuel to do that. It needs to get the proper nutrition. And that's where we see, I think the point you were making, Fiona, that the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry are kind of in cahoots together to make sure we're not getting the proper nutrition. And the only solution to the ails that we're suffering as a result of that are the ones that they're preferring, the drugs and pills and all kinds of things that are actually just keeping us in that cycle, like zombies, like cattle in a field. So this idea of the Rico ring that we're promoting, it seems like a very simple thing, and it is. There's nothing simpler. It's just us and the food we want to eat and people that want to make good food and give it to people that care about it, which is us. So I would encourage all of us here to really think about that. Needs must. If you can't, you can't. But really, we're seeing that there's a linkage here between what we eat and how we feel, and especially that trauma could be fixed by a different diet. Who would have thought it? You think either you need to have therapy or you need to have pills, and I'm not saying these things necessarily are irrelevant, but a good diet, and it's encouraging to find out that children can actually, intuitively, their bodies know how to fix themselves if they've got the right diet. And of course, respect for Mother Earth. If you don't give it out, you don't give it back. So that was a really valid point there. So thank you for making that. And finally, the point the lady at the back made, your first point, which was a really good one. And one of the ways that this agenda, the mask agenda and the vaccine agenda, was pushed on was by holding out the promise of belonging to a virtuous community. And I think that more than anything surely indicates to us when we don't make our own community, the community we end up joining is someone else's, and that someone else doesn't really love us all that much. And so really, this is a kind of wake-up call. It's an IQ test. These are the communities that we can involve in. All the things we used to value, it may have been a political party, it may have been a football team, it may have been some other, they've all been subverted. Maybe not all, that's a bit hyperbolic, but that's my style. But so many of them have been subverted, and we need to make our own. We need to make our own with people we trust that have got no agenda. None of us here are here for the money or for the power. We just want to be decent people and with a human future. And if we don't make our own agenda, we get someone else's. So thank you for reminding us that this agenda, right, this need to belong is central to us as human beings, but we need to pick carefully what group we're going to belong to. And finally, Paul's point, that when the thing comes along, in the end, you need to find meaning in some trauma. I mean, of course you can be helped, people can suggest solutions and perhaps a diet, but you need to find your own meaning at the end. And accept the point you're making, Wendy, that when you come through this, you need to say, I'm a different person. And you might have made a mistake, but if you can't accept that, and become someone else, you're stuck in the past. So, so thank you. So I think there's a lot here for us to take away. As you know, we'll carry on with it. Thank you once again. If we could put our hands together, and a thank you to Rachel.